Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, I'm not going to speak on the bill. I'm going to speak from the heart, a heavy heart, because 6 Marylanders died at the Navy Yard on Monday. I join with all Americans in expressing my deepest condolences to all of the families of those killed and injured in the Navy Yard shooting, and to particularly express my condolences to the Maryland families. I want to also thank our first responders, including the local and federal law enforcement officers who were first to arrive at the scene and took control of this terrible, horrific situation. I want to thank the doctors and all of the support staff at MedStar Trauma Center who worked so hard to help the injured and saved lives that day, and every one of those who played such an important role in responding to that emergency. My heart goes out to the victims of the families and to everyone who is mourning the loss of the men and women who died there. This has deeply affected those of us in Maryland, as it has in nearby Virginia and the District of Columbia. But for we in Maryland, this is who we mourn. A cluster of people, the dead, the shooting victims. This is Maryland and Virginia, hands across the Potomac. And we just can't believe it. We think of Kenneth Bernard Proctor. He was 46 years old. He was a civilian utilities foreman at the Navy Yard. He worked for the federal government 20 years. He lives in Charles County, married his high school sweetheart in 1994. They have 2 boys, teenagers. He loved his sons and the Redskins. Then there was Sylvia Frazier, 52 years old. She's a resident of Maryland and one of 7 children. She studied computer information systems at Strayer College. She received an undergraduate and a master's degree in computer information systems. She worked hard to get her education, and she wanted her education to work hard for America. She worked at the Navy Sea Systems Command since 2000, and she worked a few nights a week at the Waldorf as a customer service manager, helping her family, paying off student debt. Sylvia really was a remarkable person. Then there's Frank Kohler. He's 50 years old. He lived in a community called Tall Timbers, Maryland, and we certainly say to Frank, he was a tall timber when it came for working for his country. He too was a computer specialist. He worked as a contractor for Lockheed Martin. He was a graduate of the Pennsylvania College, where he met his wife, Michelle. He was a president of the Rotary Club and was honored for his Rotary Club's work. You know, down in southern Maryland, in St. Mary's County, they have an oyster festival that's coming up. He held the title King Oyster for his community service in organizing the Rotary Club's annual festival to raise money for the much-needed Rotary Club challengers. He was a great family man and loved by many. There's John Rogers Johnson, a civilian employee for the Navy who lived in Deerwood, Maryland for more than 30 years. He was the father of 4 daughters and a loving grandfather. His 11th grandchild is due in November. Like so many who live in our community, he loved the Redskins. His neighbors described him as smart, always had a smile, and was always there for his neighbor. Then there's Vishnu Pandit, 61 years old. He came from India in his early 20s. He lived with his wife, Anjali, in North Potomac, Maryland. He's the father of 2 sons. He is so well liked in his community, and he was known for helping people, and particularly those in the community in Maryland that are part of the Indian heritage community. He was known for talking about job opportunities, educational opportunities, and was a strong advocate for them. He was proud of his heritage from his mother country, but he was proud of being a citizen of the United States of America. Richard Michael Rogel, 52 years old, a father of 3. This guy, though, was a Ravens fan. When Ravens came into Baltimore and number one. He bought season tickets and has owned them for the last 17 years. He grew up in a community called Brooklyn, Maryland, but settled in Carroll County in Westminster. He was a Maryland State Trooper before he came to work in federal service. A great guy and someone who really liked to protect and defend people in many, many ways. And those are the 6, and there are the 13 that died, and there are those that are recovering. It's just a heavy, heavy heart that we have. In the wake of yet another senseless tragedy and mass casualties, I hope we do take an action to end this kind of violence. Senseless acts of violence are taking innocent lives in our communities. I hope we do something about it. There are those who are calling for renewed background checks. I support that. Renewed efforts to get guns out of the hands of dangerous people. I support that. But you know, Mr. President, there's also people who suffer from mental illness. This case is currently under investigation, so I'm not going to comment on the person we know who has done this horrific, horrific act and the struggles that he had with the demons inside of him. I just know we've got to come to grips with problems. Yes, background checks are one thing, but really, this is where I truly agree with the NRA. We've got to do something about mental illness and early detection and early treatment. We mourn for those whose lives we lost on Monday. We mourned for their families, and we hope now that out of this, some positive thing grows. But I want to say to their families, today's not really the day to talk about public policy. What I want to say about these families is the men and women who were at that Navy Yard are federal employees. They work hard every single day. They were proud to work for the United States government. They were proud to do everything from IT service to security service. Some had master's degrees, some had high school educations. Whatever was their education, whatever zip code they came from, they really served one nation and one flag. And I want to, acknowledge their tremendous service to this country. I want to acknowledge the wonderful way that they were involved with their family and their community. And in behalf of all Maryland, I know that Senator Cardin and I wish to express our deepest gratitude to them for their lives and to express our heartfelt sympathy and condolences. Mr. President, I yield the floor.